hey, come on in, how strong deer you want? And we're like, oh, cool. I found a 370-inch bull, 16-year-old kid, rifle on the morning of rifle season, 200 yards off the county road and shot him. Big old back ends. Oh, heck yeah, we're shooting this deer. You are not passing this deer up.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to episode number 8 on the Bows, Bros, and Bucks podcast. Today we have Dylan, and he's going to explain who he is, where he's from, and kind of what started his journey.
Dylan from Casper, Wyoming, just a little town here. Now it's about like 50,000 people, but yeah, I'm born and raised in Casper, and just have a passion for the outdoors. I love Jesus, and yeah, just kind of like sharing, my content that I produce of everything that I do outside. That's pretty much a gist of me. I'm only 23, so I'm just a young dude.
Yeah,
But
I'm
yeah,
22, so I gotcha.
yeah, there you go. Yep, couple young bucks running around. But anyway, yeah, that's just it's pretty of a quick background of me anyway.
What part of Wyoming is that? I mostly know like Jackson and places like that for people that aren't from Wyoming.
Right. Yeah, so it's part of so it's Casper. Casper is basically like um it's right in the center, basically right in the center of Wyoming. Um it's I like it a lot because I can, go north, south, east, or west and get to wherever I'm trying to get in an hour or two instead of living in Jackson. And then if you had to get to the west or the east side of the state, you'd be driving like 6, 7 hours. So makes it kind of convenient for me what I do. But yeah,
Awesome. So if you don't know who I am, so my name's Kyle. I'm from New Hampshire, originally, and then I moved out to college in Idaho. So that's where I kind of got the Western viewers and did my shed hunting and all that stuff out there. So I would love to talk to you. For my East Coast viewers, obviously shed hunting's a lot bigger out there, and they have elk sheds and the Jackson Hole Refuge and all that.
right.
So I heard and saw on your story that they're closing it for a certain time for non-residents to Wyoming. Do you want to explain for the viewers what that's about?
Yeah, so it's actually something I'm actually going to do a live video on here just pretty shortly. But the main thing is with Wyoming. So every state's got their own little rule with it, but Wyoming doesn't have a rule. For 3/4 of the state, it's open all year round. Now on the west side of the state, from the west, it's called the Continental Divide. The west side of the Continental Divide, you can the shed hunting there is closed from. Anyway, yeah. So the west side of the Continental Divide is closed beginning of the year all the way till the April 30th, and then May 1st is when it opens back up. So May 1st all the way through the end of the year, you can shed hunt. So it's obviously a mad race on the west side of the state to shed hunt. One of the bigger ones that I do is the Jackson Hole shed opener. Um, they're they're presenting a new bill to the governor. It's already gone through House and through Senate. It's already passed that. So it basically just needs a stamp of approval through the governor to pass. But and just so everybody knows, I feel kind of neutral on this. I understand both sides. I don't really have a side on this. But what they're doing is they're presenting a rule to non-residents to basically they wouldn't be able to shed hunt until like the 4th of May. So they're giving the residents an advantage to shed hunt for 3 days on the west side of the state before it opens. And they're also, which I just found out today, they're also presenting a rule where it opens up the closure further east of the state. So it's basically going to be 4/5 of the state is all going to be on some kind of an enclosure now. So we don't know what the dates are. We don't know if that's going to pass, but there's a lot of people that have like heavy, I guess, feelings on this whole thing. So we're going to address some of those tonight and see where everybody is at and kind of how everybody's taking it. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting topic for sure. As far as for me personally, it doesn't really matter to me what happens.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna make whatever work.
Yeah,
So,
well, you're a resident, so it doesn't really affect you. For the people
right,
that might be coming out of state, I know some people fly across the country even to do it. Is
right.
it the same thing they're going to do for the Jackson Refuge? Because those 3 days, I feel like almost all of them could be picked up in that amount of time.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are going to. So yeah, it's going to make definitely a significant difference. Mainly the residents will obviously have that upper hand advantage. What what is really going to actually come out to play is if they do this closure all the way over to this side of the state, then if they make it May 1st, there's going to be far less people at the Jackson Shed Hunt opener because there won't be non-residents there. Just so everybody knows, when you're out shed hunting in Wyoming, it seems like to me 50% of the shed hunters that are out there currently are non-residents. So it's going to cut, obviously for the residents, it's great. It's going to cut all the non-residents out. There's some problems with that though, because once Wyoming does that, there's no reason Idaho's not going to do the same thing, or Montana, or
Yeah.
Utah. So it's just kind of one of those things that some people feel some things may happen or may not happen, and it might affect what they decide to do. But in the grand scheme of things, everything happens for a reason. So it's one of those things that I'm just going to make do with what happens. I'm going to be pretty positive about it. A lot of people are pretty negative. They're so mad that there's governors making decisions and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do. It really isn't.
Yeah.
So,
And that's
yeah,
kind of my opinion is I always think less government, of course, is we're not going to get into politics, but I think less government telling us what we can do, even down to the smallest thing of antlers, is kind of sad. And I
right.
think that it's just different. And then there's also other factors like how do you know if someone's a non-resident or not? You can't just
Yeah,
go based off their license plate because people can, and there's a lot of people that already poach Jackson
right.
heavily.
Hmm.
So the amount of sheds that are already piled up in stash piles or other things that
Hmm.
I've heard of going on, it's going to make it difficult. Like when I went last year, I didn't get onto the refuge because I didn't realize there was a sign up. So I want to do that for this year if they're still
Yeah.
doing that. I'll ask you about that in a second.
Hmm.
Um, but we went out, if you go through Jackson Hole, straight out, and then through the roundabout to the right, kind of, and way back there. So like
Yep.
a little bit south of Jackson,
Yeah.
southwest.
It's the Flat Creek parking lot.
Yeah. So we were all in a line of cars there, and I had never shed hunted Wyoming before because I majority do Idaho.
Right.
And I was like, this is just fun for me. Like at that point, I had already had like 115 antlers on the season, so I was
Yeah.
happy with what I had, but that's because I had a lot of private land access in other places in Idaho that were open already on April 15th. So when I went there, I mean, I found like one chalk and then like the rest there was just bear tracks and wolf tracks and boot tracks from people being up there before they were supposed to. So it is what it is. Part of that's the fact that I had never been there, so I didn't know where to go. So I'm sure people found them, but the majority of the people that I heard were finding lots of them were on the refuge. But
Right.
I'm sure locals like yourself, you guys know where they go and where the melt line is already because you've been scouting for years, and
Right.
sometimes the patterns are different for elk. But
Yeah, pretty much with that one, it's just a race. I mean, everybody, if there's a newbie ever doing that one, you just need to just follow somebody and um, just do what other people are doing. And it's basically the best way to do it. That's how I learned how to do it, and I've only been doing it, I guess, 5 years now. But yeah, the very first year I did it, that was the last year they had it in the dark, which they did it at midnight is the opener.
hmm,
So, and that was a lot of fun. Oh my gosh, because you got to shed hunt all night, and then when the sun came out the next morning, there's all kinds of sheds that everybody missed. The problem is now people don't want that happening, I guess, in the dark because people are poaching antlers too early, and they game and fish
yeah,
can't catch them in the dark. So, but the problem is it's the same thing. The same point of view is like taking away your gun rights. So if somebody was to, the government was to come through and do some kind of crazy law, kind of like Canada or whatever, and they take away your gun rights, um, all the people that would follow the rules are not the ones that are breaking the rules. The people that are breaking the rules don't care. So, that's just going to do nothing but just hurt everybody that can actually defend themselves. It's the same instance here. Everybody that already poaches antlers, none of these rules apply to them. But it will apply for us that actually try to follow the rules and make it a fair chase for everybody else. So, it's just one of those things that just depends on who you are and how many, I guess, bad people are around.
Yeah, it only Martin said this, like it only hurts the ethical people. So
Yeah.
that's really what it comes down to. But enough about the shed hunting. We could talk about that for eons. I know I could. Um, but I'll have to ask you at the end of this, just so my viewers don't have to waste their time, but how you sign up for
Sure.
the Jackson, Wyoming thing. So I wanted to ask you, so what's your favorite type of animal to hunt if you had to choose big game wise?
That's a good question, and a lot of people ask me that, and I think depending on the week, I'll have a different answer. Um, and the only way I can answer that, and I have to answer this every time, is I got to look back on my favorite hunts that I've ever been on, because every hunt's different. I mean, every single year I have something different happen. Um, I can tell you the same hunt that I've been going on for the last 7, 8 years has been my antelope hunt that I go on. Um, I just really enjoy antelope hunting. I think it's the most rewarding because you can pick through, $200, and then you'd see $200 in a day. I mean, we have that many antelope here. So I don't know. That's probably my favorite hunt because we get to stay picky. At any moment you can fill your tag, but you can kind of sit there and really truly um, test your patience, if you will, in a different kind of way. Because like
Yeah,
elk hunting, you're testing your patience because you don't see anything. So it's a little different in that aspect, But I definitely think that those are probably more of the fun style hunts to me as an antelope hunt. I really love mule deer as they're like the animal itself themselves. I think they're one of the hardest animals to hunt, especially with a bow. They don't make noises most of the times in Wyoming. We don't have any seasons during the rut, so it's really tough to hunt, especially with a bow. They're
same
not
for
noisy
Idaho.
like
Yeah,
yeah, they're not a noisy animal. They're just one of those animals that, they know really how to hide really well. They're not a big oafy animal. When they run through the trees, you don't hear them. You hear a dang elk going like just crashing through like a bowling ball. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, each one's got their own perks to it. Obviously, drawing a limited quota elk tag is fun too. But I'd probably, yeah, probably go back to antelope just because I can do it every year, and I think I've got so much knowledge about it that I feel like that's probably my best animal that as far as like how much I know about them, if that makes sense.
yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's the interesting thing is like I don't see a lot of people that kill. I mean, there's a couple, but where I live in southeastern Idaho, I'll occasionally see someone kill an over-the-counter big one, but those
Mhm.
like 185 plus and 200 plus, those are all being killed like late season on draw tags, like very exclusive desert late season where they're coming in um, down from the mountains. In Wyoming, I know that you guys like had Popeye and all those famous deer, and they
Right.
eluded hunters forever. And Eastman guy followed him and they saw, and I think it was like 30 miles from his home range from like summer
Mhm.
to winter. It's just
Yeah.
incredible how much mule deer move. And I think every single different environment for every animal's hard in some way. Like you
Right.
said, I would have never thought you would answer with antelope, to be honest. I call them speed goats. I see them all
Right.
the time. I don't really, I mean, I'm not like, oh, I want to hunt those, but with a bow, that would be sick. Like I
Right.
would totally want to do that. I've always joked with people I want to sit in one of those uh
Yeah.
water things and just come out of the water, shoot one, but I know their eyesight. They see you so far away. It's crazy.
Oh yeah.
It's
Yep.
incredible how good their eyesight is.
Yeah, it is definitely insane. That's the one thing about it makes them tough. But yeah, no, I think they're an underrated animal for sure because They're a pretty smart animal, honestly. Not very smart when they're by the road, but they're smart animal, and they're a lot harder to hunt than you would think. Um, but I mean, we just have such an abundance of them in Wyoming. I think everybody takes them for granted because once you legitimately know how to score an antelope and you're out there hunting, that's what makes it a lot of fun because it's always a chase with antelope. Like they're always on a dead run. They're not like jogging and stopping, looking at you, jogging and stopping. They're on a dead run. They'll stop for a second, dead run. So you got to keep running after them. You go over the hill, you get everything set up in case it's a big goat. Then you go, oh, it's not a big goat. You keep moving on. Oh, it's not a big one. Keep moving on. You just cycle through like 200 of them until you finally find a big goat. And they're not going to be by the road. They're going to be way out there in the middle of nowhere. And the coolest part about them is they stick to their territory, so you won't lose them. So if you have eyes on a buck, just keep an eye on them for like a week or 2 weeks or whatever. I've even like Grace's antelope. She killed my wife. She killed an antelope last year. We had eyes on him in April, and we watched him the whole time. He never moved from 100-yard radius from where he was at the whole time.
Wow.
So that's the coolest part about them is you can start scouting them so early because they drop their horns in November. So they start growing and they won't be fully grown until obviously hunting season. They just keep growing. There's not really a stopping point for them.
It's like the
Um,
sheaths, right? Because I think I
yeah,
found one. They're pretty
yeah,
nasty smelling,
yeah, oh
but
yeah,
yeah.
oh yeah, they're pretty gross. Yeah, yeah, but no, I think they're just such a cool animal. I don't think a lot of people have that opportunity to go and hunt an antelope every single year, and like a big antelope every single year. Like you'll have non-residents that come over here. They spend 10 years building points to come over here and kill an antelope, and us residents can draw every year, and we just take it for granted. We're just like, oh, let's just go kill an antelope. You run out real quick, kill an antelope, and that was stupid.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
you take
I
it
think
serious
that's
if you know how to
interesting.
do it, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah, yeah,
And that's the
that's
thing where there's places where like even whitetails, so like my background is whitetail hunting originally, so like if you go other places, whitetail hunting is like they're abundant, they're everywhere and it's easy. And then you come up northeast and it's like extremely difficult and it's just like people take it for granted when the hunting or there's an abundance of an animal that you're hunting.
mhm,
Um, but when it comes to antelope, so it's interesting. So like one of the things I love about mule deer is like each one of the like big sheds I have, like just they're so unique, like the
right.
different things about them. So like one of them, this one's like one of my favorite. Like this burr is like
Hmm.
incredible,
Yeah, it's pretty
and
cool.
it's got like two little points coming off its cheater, and I actually found 2 years off of them. And then I have a couple other ones where the base is just like web out. And do you see non-typicals for antelope? Like how does that work for them, or is it just like some? Do they ever get double curls or whatever the case is?
So basically, the only style that you'll see is what's called a freak, and I'm sure they call those same things for like an elk or a deer, but a freak is one that like his horn will come up this way and his other one will be like laying out flat, or sometimes it'll be curled over into like an antelope's mouth,
Mm-hmm.
uh, or they'll be flat, like or just both of them are forward. Like there's some cool freaks out there. Honestly, I'm um, not keen into the freak antelope. Dang cats down here. Oh, hi, buddy. Come here. But yeah, I'm just not much into the freaks for antelope, just because they don't score very well normally. Um, and I'm actually more of about I'm more of a score person when it comes to antelope, just because that's the challenge to me is field judging him and then shooting him and then finding out how big he really is. Because they're probably one of the hardest animals to field judge, in my opinion, just because they're so small as it is. And
Mm.
then trying to really get an accurate measurement, and you just study them and study them and study them, and then you grow this emotional attachment to them because I've been looking at him for 2 months, and I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure he's 77. He could be 76. Then you shoot him and he's like 72. And you're like, frick. So it just do nothing but just helps you improve your ability to look at these animals. And it'd be probably the same kind of style if you're a sheep hunter. I have no idea how to score a sheep besides if he's got big curls, that's probably a good thing.
Yeah,
But
100%.
I guarantee you, I go on a hunt or two, I'll know how to score them. you know. That's kind of the mentality about it, and they'd probably be a really fun animal to hunt.
What's Pope and Young for? Is it 90 inches? I
For
can't
an antelope,
remember. Yeah.
no, Pope and Young, since that's an archery book,
Oh, sorry, not Pope and Young, Boone and Crockett, whatever.
Boone and
Or
Crockett, yeah. So Boone and Crockett's 80 inches, and then they have an all-time of 82 or bigger. So if you just get the 80 inches, that's like that temporary award or whatever. It's for 5 years that stays in the book, and then it gets deleted. But if you have one that's 82 inches or bigger, then that's a Boone and Crockett antelope. And honestly, that they're really hard. You'll talk to so many people that say that they've got this 85-inch goat or they've seen an 80-inch goat or whatever. Truthfully, they're so hard to find. A true 80-inch antelope. Even my buddies that I tell them that all the time. But they'll be like, dude, I saw this 80-inch goat. Like, he's probably like 75, but it's okay. It's
well, it's
just
like
the
it's like
slight
anything
part
with
of me,
score.
just because
It's
I,
a lot of people just get excited. So
yeah, right. And it's stupid. I mean, score really is so dumb, especially because how they score these animals is really actually a, a really bad way of scoring it. In my opinion, they need to do something like water displacement or like volume measurement, where you have like a bucket of water.
hello, a bucket of wall.
Hello?
There you go, bucket of water.
There we
Yeah,
go.
like
Okay.
put the antler inside it, right?
Yeah, just like measures where the water level goes up, and then that gives you your score. And then nobody's
Yeah.
like wrong because everybody's got the same way of doing it. Do the same thing with deer, elk. I think that'd be the best way of doing it because I mean I've got elk and deer that score would score way higher just because there's so much like mass on the fourth, but at the very top, and you'd never score that with a Boone and Crockett score because you just measure the time length and you're done. Like you could have this this big of a fourth that goes all the way up that's 20 inches long, or you could have one that's this big around that goes 20 inches, but it doesn't make a difference in the score.
Yep.
So I think like volume would be the best way to score an actual antler or horn or whatever, just because it's measuring the entirety of the horn or antler.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I think the water displacement and those things are great if it's a certain type of scoring system where you're bringing it to someone. I think it's a little unrealistic for everyone to do it on an individual basis because I can barely fit an elk in some of my cars, let alone a bathtub or some like I don't know how you would do it specifically, but I think it's an interesting idea. But one of the things that sucks about Boone and Crockett is the the things that detract from the score. So if you're scoring it, whether it's a typical or non-typical, sometimes you'll lose score. Or say if like a shed is palmated, you're losing the distance from the
Right.
base or
Mm-hmm.
the distance between the gaps and stuff. So like this buck right here, huge gap, but that doesn't help him because his front fork is tiny. So like
Yep.
you just lose and gain some things. So it's interesting. And one of the things that's like people are like, well, it's too late, you can't change it. And I'm like, well, it's kind of true because you want to know like the base of like talking to someone like, oh, I saw 150. It's just basically a way to base it off of that because then in age class ish, obviously every deer animal is different, and there's especially for elk, you can see a downward spiral when they get too old. But yeah, it's interesting talking about score. There we go. I think
Oh, there we go.
yeah,
It's so weird. It just like kicks out for like
yeah,
five
it's weird.
seconds.
It's got to be one of our Wi-Fi's or something.
Yeah, probably mine or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll blame it on you because you're not the
Yeah.
host.
Yeah, there you go. Sounds good.
So the next thing I want to talk about is um common hunter mistakes for basically someone going that's not from there to the West Coast or
Sure.
Western states. What are some mistakes that people make? You can talk about mule deer, you could talk about elk, whatever you want.
I think the most common mistake, well, so good question. I would say probably the most common mistake is thinking that you're better than anybody. And it's actually a little different approach there instead of like an actual field question. This is more of a mentality thing. I'm always learning. Like I had some issues with my elk hunt this last year that I really learned from, and I know how to move forward and better myself with that hunt. I'm not a perfect person, and everybody makes mistakes with stuff, and I think that it's important to not get full of yourself you know people are uh, when people are asking questions, or if somebody's ever like I guess, how do you put it? You should never think of yourself as better than anybody else. And I think in this industry in particular, everybody's kind of gets that mentality, and it really sucks to see that on social media. My biggest push is positivity on social media as much as I can, just because there's so many negative hunters and just people out there that it really discourages a lot of people. And I mean, I've gotten discouraged myself just from people that just hate the fact that I have a larger page. I mean, they might think that, oh, this guy's got a larger page, he gets free stuff and he does this. I don't like this guy. There's just people that just automatically don't like me. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I would say the biggest thing is, yeah, obviously the mentality of, yeah, having the thought that you're better than everybody else. So another mistake that I have learned from in the last few years is how you stock an animal. And I've actually learned from somebody who's been a hunter for years and years and years and years. I grew up not having a family that really hunted much, just so everybody knows. I pretty much had to teach myself everything. I mean, they grew up around hunting. Wyoming is a hunting state. I mean, everybody's around hunting, but not like how I hunt. I hunt all the time. I scout. I am outdoors all year round. Nobody in my family does that. So yeah, I really had to teach myself all this, and especially with archery hunting, it's very discouraging. Like archery hunting is really tough. It's really, really, really tough, and social media makes it look easy, but it's not.
Nope, it is not.
It is very, very hard and very frustrating, and I think a lot of people would get up pretty quick. But the biggest, I guess, advice I can give to somebody, whether they're rifle hunting or bow hunting in particular, when you're stalking an animal, and you found something and you're doing a spot and stalk style hunt, and you found something bedded under a tree or whatever, take your time. Like if you got to put a 7 hour stalk, just one stalk, just to get that wind right, your scent is not carrying into where they're smelling. You're downwind, and you're out of sight. You're moving 1 inch at a time every 5 seconds. Whatever you got to do, it's going to be a lot more frustrating, but you have to have patience. I mean, you have to have patience if you're going to be successful. This last bull that I killed this last year, it took me 5 hours to put one stock on him, and I finally shot him. And it sounds awesome, but I mean, I did the same thing to another bull previously before that. I put on a 2.5 hour stock and I blew it at 20 yards. So
Wow.
just take your time, crawl in there, getting close. If it's rifle and you're a ways away and they're going over the canyon, you're never going to see them again. I get it. Get set up and shoot. I totally understand. But if they're bedded, you got them in your sight. Don't panic. Don't freak out. Take your time. Just get in there without being seen. But yeah, I mean, you just gotta just take your time. You have to literally play that on through your mind. It's the biggest thing I can tell somebody who hasn't been told that, and I had to learn that the hard way several times.
Yeah, I mean, even this year I stalked the biggest buck of my life, and I got it probably was like a 30-minute stalk because I was waiting. The first like 15 minutes of it was super easy. I could just like walk and crawl on my hands and knees. But the rest I had to wait every time the wind gust went. Then that's when I went because he was bedded with a doe.
Mm.
So I had to make sure that I was doing that right. I was checking in the wind with my mouth or the little puffer thing. just constantly checking that and trying to sneak around, and even had to go under like a fence and stuff and just try to be really quiet. And I ended up having a shot, but it was a frontal shot and I didn't have the setup for it just
Hmm.
because I just was not set up for that. There's a lot of reasons. I was hunting out of state, so I didn't have my bow just because of the circumstances. It was kind of like a off the off the cuff thing. So my buddy let me use his bow, and I mean I was dialed in, but I just wanted to make sure he was broadside. But he I could see the steam coming out of his mouth, and he was trying to come right at me, and then he just shot to the side and just blew. But I learned so much just from that one stock and all the other stocks that I've had in the past, just making sure that it's not always a rush. Like, of
Right.
course, if you're rushing for daylight, that's different. But I think a more ethical hunter, like I'm surprised I didn't just fling an arrow, because I think a lot of people would have, and I honestly thought about it, just flinging one. But I mean, on deer, sometimes it's a small cavity if you don't have the right fixed blade or whatever the or heavy arrow setup, whatever
Mhm.
the case is. I didn't I knew the equipment I had and I didn't want to risk it, but then I ended up killing a, another good buck that's up on the wall behind me, so I was happy.
Right. That's
Um,
good.
for elk, so it sounds like you're doing spot and stock. Are they with other cows and stuff, like paired up in like herds, or are they so you have other eyes looking at you, or is it usually a singled out bull?
Well, since it's in September, they're normally cowed up. It's pretty tough to find something by itself. So yeah, you got more eyes on you than normal. So yeah, that's why it's definitely a lot more tough to get within range. If you're calling and you're in the timber, I mean, that's one thing because you got so much cover, you're good. And elk are actually surprisingly they're very blind. But if you're out in the wide open, you're in the sagebrush. I mean, like I was with my elk, I had to get close, and there was probably 300 head of elk down there in that sagebrush flat. So I had to figure out how in the world to crawl in there. But luckily, the sagebrush was about 3 feet high. So, I mean, I
That's
could get
good.
down on my hands and knees and stay under the brush and just like tunnel my way all the way through there and just kind of peek my head up every now and then, see where they're at, get down and crawl, and my elbows and knees and freaking legs and arms and everything. I've got a cut from one of the sagebrush. It's going to be a permanent scar for the rest of my life just from crawling through there. But it was tough. I mean, I went through the abuse of taking my time, and I could definitely have. I mean, I could have definitely rushed it a lot more, um, and maybe have been fine, but I didn't want to risk it. You know, I wanted a bowl, and I knew that I had to work hard to get to it. So I think hard work reaps good reward, in my opinion, with how that works. So yeah,
100%. And when you're calling for people that are, a lot of people comment and ask me when it comes to like Western hunting, when an elk is coming in, and even for whitetails, this happens when they try to wind you and they're basically getting held up at that 100 or 500 yards, whatever the range may be.
right.
How do you get those in if are you single hunting by yourself, or what is usually the case, or is there someone calling behind you?
Totally depends. If I got my good buddy John with me, yeah, he's definitely calling. But yeah, most of the time I'm by myself.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes it difficult. Is there any strategies that you do that like put water on the ground out of a water bottle like an elk's pissing or anything like that that you've done that's out of
No,
the ordinary?
not nothing crazy. Just I mean, besides blowing stocks, I've I'm definitely doing that quite a bit. But just trial and error. It seems like every situation is different. But yeah, dude, I think it's kind of impossible to really know what's going to happen. Just kind of have to do it and see what happens, and then if it doesn't work, then don't do it the next time. And sometimes the next time is when you needed to do it. So it's hard to say. I mean, yeah, we break in trees to represent an elk, like in the rut, like just getting ready to fight. mean, that's definitely something that they do. Yeah, I don't know, man. Just every situation's a little different. Just trying not to be seen is the biggest thing.
And where are you locating most of these bulls? Like, for people that are like, well, I just can't find elk. Are you hunting near wallows? Are you hunting bedding areas or whatever?
So yeah, that's a good question because I get that question a lot. You've got to just move ground. I mean, if you're not seeing elk, you're not seeing elk sign. You got to just keep covering ground. And sometimes it'll take you a whole week before you find elk. And a week later, maybe you find where they were the week before, and you wish you would have been there to start. But you know that for next year, so you keep that in mind. Just write and take notes. Treat it as if you're working hard, like you're paid to do something like that. Like just honestly, um, put some effort into it and use your mind. And I think that's going to help out. If you just expect things to just happen for you, they won't. Um, you gotta really work and earn your reward for sure. Elk is probably the hardest animal to hunt when it comes to um, just all around like the terrain and the style and what you have to give up to hunt them. I think they're they're probably honestly people are gonna hate this, but they're probably my least favorite animal to hunt of all three of them, just because
How hard it
there's
is?
so much commitment that goes into an elk
Mm,
hunt. It's not like a run after work, go look for an elk real quick kind of hunt. I mean, maybe you could do that for a deer, or definitely can do that for an antelope, but elk, no, you're making that commitment that you're in there. Like, here's an example. For those that follow me, saw the story, but I found a 370-inch bull opening day of archery season, and I made the commitment right then and there. I'm hunting this bull and only this bull. So when you make that kind of a commitment, you're giving up all other opportunities of where else you can go. You might be competing with people at that point. Like I found this bull and I was like, that's the bull I want. I want to kill this bull. So I spent all 5 days hunting this thing, and there's a couple buddies that came down to help, and it was a lot of fun. I found him every night, every morning, put him to bed in trees and put stalks in, blew all kinds of stalks on him. Dude, he had 100 cows with him just by himself, and I couldn't
holy
get close
crap.
enough. Yeah, couldn't get close enough to him. I got good pictures, good video. I put in so much work for those 5 days, and I would have stayed out there until I had him killed. Luckily, with my job, I'm a real estate agent in Wyoming, so I can pick and choose my hours, which is nice. But I made that commitment. I'm like, I'm staying out here. Well, circumstances didn't go very well. My wife's mom wasn't doing well. She was down in Denver. She had cancer, and
Mm.
actually, we got the call that she was going to pass away. So we took the trip down to Colorado, and I had to leave that bull up there, and had to regroup and everything after that whole kind of thing transpired, and came back. It was like the 20th, and no idea where that bull went. I mean, because there's 15 days in that period that we just completely didn't know what happened to him. Well, as it turns out, obviously I killed the bull that I did like the 21st in a completely different spot. I just kind of started from scratch at that point, which was a good thing because I found a really good area where I had never thought about going before. And I don't think anybody's ever been down there before because it's a freaking heck of a trip down there. But yeah, I found that bull down in the sagebrush, killed him, and then long story short, I find out that a 16-year-old kid with a rifle on the opening morning of rifle season found that 370-inch bull 200 yards off the county road and shot him. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's frustrating because it's like I put 5 days of full effort into that elk, like, and then I had to leave. Like, there's nothing I could have done to stay. Came back, and obviously I ended up pulling the trigger on a different bull because I didn't know where he went. And actually, an even funnier story about it is he was last where I left him off. Like that bull was literally right where the last spot was that I saw him that 5th day of September. So he was just out there by himself. I had already at that point separated him from his cows, which was my main goal, so I could get in there and get a stock in because there's too many eyes. I mean, that's 200
Yeah.
eyeballs looking at you. So yeah, I separated him from his cows.
How do you do that?
You know, it's a good question. I had to figure that out. Every scenario is a little different, but if you can cut them off in some way, some shape or form, if there's multiple bulls down there battling for this herd, if you can get between them, I mean, that's a good way of doing it because one's going to run that way, the rest of the herd's going to go that way, and hope to
The
keep them
satellite
separated.
bulls.
Yep, hope to keep them separated, and that's how I finally end up getting my way in between the cows and him, and everybody or all the elk knew it. They all split off in the different directions, and he went all by himself way out in the flats. And turns out those flats do have a main county road that drive right through it, and that's where that kid shot him 25 days later, opening day of rifle season. Yeah, just
Good for the kid, but
yeah,
seriously, it's
I know, good for the kid. I mean, and there's nothing I can do about it. And like I said, I think good things came out of it. I killed a bull, obviously, with my bow, which I found out through a harvest report. Only 11 other people did in that area. So, I mean, I feel that is a big accomplishment. Wasn't 370 inches by any means, probably a 315 bull. So I'm happy.
well, that's what I was gonna ask you is if he survived, but then you got to that point, so
Yeah,
that sucks.
yeah, it does.
I mean that's the thing. I've talked to my buddy about this on one of my first podcasts, finding happiness in other people's success. And I think especially in hunting, something that we devote so much time and especially out west, money, the
Right.
travel, the gear, the food, the time
The
away from
gas.
your family, the
Yeah.
gas, Joe
Yeah.
Biden, um,
Okay.
every everything that is involved in those trips. It's not like you said, just like a every other day thing
Right.
where you can like just go after work or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like it is a money game, and the people that do have a lot of money can spend more time out there, but
Right.
also having like the knowledge that you have and knowing that you need to be on him and know where he's at
Mhm.
and follow him is important because like you said, there could be that dumb luck where the kid just like sees it off the road and shoots it.
Yeah.
Like a buck that I was hunting for years, um, I had him under my tree stand and I could have shot him 15 minutes before legal shooting light, and I didn't, and then he got poached a week later. And that entire week I had been hunting and passing good deer because I was waiting for that buck, not knowing that he had been poached. So,
Right. Oh, frick. Oh,
uh,
shoot.
I
That
mean,
sucks.
and that's the point where it going after one specific animal, majority of the people listening to this, you're probably not in that standpoint. I think a lot of people, it's anything that they are happy with, they will shoot, and that's usually the case for me. But if I know about one specific animal, like a giant animal, like a 370 bull or a 200-inch mule deer, or whatever the case is, it, I would think you're crazy if you don't want to try to just target that. But
Oh,
so,
absolutely.
but some people obviously have a hard time passing, and that's totally fine because I've been there, and now I just want to try to get better and bigger every year, and that's just my
Right.
personal goal.
Yeah, no, that brings up a good point. That it's good to share, kind of tagging along with the original question of, advice of what to do here. Um, but this is uh this is something I learned this last year. My wife drew this crazy good, well, I should say crazy good deer tag. She drew a deer tag. It was nothing crazy, right? Um, and the night before opening day, we show up and found this giant deer, like just this big old deer on private. And we were like, let's go ask the landowner for permission, just see what he says. It's not going to hurt. And drove up to the ranch house, all nervous, knocked on the door. This old guy comes to the door and he's like, "Oh, hey, come on in, come on in." We're
I
like, "Oh,
love when that
man,
happens.
we're just wondering if we can go shoot this deer that's on your place. She's got this deer. Oh yeah, shoot all the deer you want." And we're like, "Oh, cool," So next morning, We're all excited. Of course, we couldn't sleep. We've got pictures of this deer. Like we made it our screensaver. We're all excited. And opening morning comes. This deer is standing like 10 feet off the road, just right there, staring us down. And we're like, we come over the hill. We're like, oh crap, get out, grab your gun. It's right here. Like we need to, like it's gonna happen. Well, that deer just like, nope, took off up into the public land hills, just like gone, just like that. And there was more deer on the field that day, which there wasn't the night before. So, like Grace, grab your rifle. Let's run up there after him. So we go up there, and he's gone. Right? He clobbered us way up there in the hills. No idea where he went. And we're sitting there trying to
How
figure out.
big for a perspective was he? Just curious. If you
I
had
mean,
to
I wish I
estimate.
had there with me to show you, but my Instagram page, I have tons of pictures of
Is
him.
that
He's
is that
100.
the one? Is that the one
That's
that
the
she
one.
got? Oh, okay,
Yep,
I did see
that's the
that
one.
then.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. That's the one she got. But yeah,
Sorry,
it's
my bad. We'll cut that. We'll edit that out.
Yeah, yeah. Let me finish my story. Hold on. We're good. We're good. We're good.
I got
Uh,
all excited.
yeah. Anyway, I'm sitting there with her, like we're trying to make a game plan of what we should do. Right. All of a sudden, from that field comes another big deer, and he's probably like 5, 7 inches smaller than the last one, like just barely smaller. He doesn't have trash like the other one does. He has that first one we saw has kickers and cheaters and extra points. This one's just a typical deer, big old back end, smaller front end, but he's just a big, heavy, wide, like just beautiful deer. I'm like, oh heck yeah! He runs up right up the drainage to us. Doesn't even know we're there. I'm like, Grace, get down, shoot this deer. She's like, nope. I'm like, get down and shoot this deer. Like you are shooting this deer. You are not passing this deer up. It's like a 165-inch deer. She's like, no, I'm not shooting this deer. I'm like, Grace, that she's like, I was like, why are you not killing this thing? Well, I want to kill that other one. Like, I know you want to kill that other one. I really want you to kill that other one, but you're never gonna see that other deer again. Like it's gone. Uh, shoot this deer. Like rides right up to us. I'm like, just at least get on it, think about it. I'm like on the spotter. I'm like, oh my gosh, this deer. I have never had a chance at a deer like this with a tag in my pocket. So I'm like, kill this deer, Grace. You don't have anything bigger than 100 inches. Kill this thing. Nope. I'm like, I was so mad, dude. I was fuming mad. Because she let this thing go, and there's nothing I can do. It's not my tag, it's hers. And I was extremely mad. And I straight up told her, like, we don't kill this other deer, I am going to be so livid at you. Like I was so mad, and I shouldn't have been mad, but it just you don't do that. You don't pass up a deer like that. That's what I thought.
No, yeah.
Well, turns out she's like, let's just hike way up in the hill, see if we can find it. Okay, whatever. Like, yeah, right. So
Yeah,
we go,
whatever. Sure, whatever you say.
yeah, yeah. So we just walk up in the hills. We hike in there about 2.5 miles. Don't see anything. I was like, I'm turning around. We're going back to the truck. I'm just mad. Just we didn't talk the entire time. We're just mad at each other. And I'm just walking back to the truck. And I get about 100 yards. Grace goes, Dylan! I'll turn around. And like 100 yards from her on the far ridge, here's this deer popping out of the dang cut, bouncing along, and it's that giant buck that we saw. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, long story short, remember how I was saying earlier, you put in the time and effort on a stalk. We ended up shooting at him, and actually, she ended up shooting him in the leg, which wounded him, but he still could have gotten away if he really wanted to. He got to the edge of pine trees, which you get into pine trees, they're pretty much toast. Like they're gone.
Yeah.
But he bedded in the sagebrush right before the pine trees because, at that point, we kind of let him do his thing. But we had eyes on him. We made the smart move and just let him do his thing. We started following him and we made this long trek. It was a 3 mile stalk on him all the way around, and she ended up killing him. I mean, and it was one of those humbling moments for me. I remember sitting there just thinking this would have never happened. Like she passed up a 165-inch deer, and she ended up getting a 173-inch deer out of it. I mean, it's props to her. I would have never been able to do that. I don't know. I don't know what kind of lesson there is there for all these people listening here, but if there is any kind of any kind of takeaway, maybe listen to your wife. And the second thing is
Happy
just,
wife, happy life.
yeah. Second thing is, sometimes it does pay off to pass up a big deer, which I don't know how to do that. I don't have the answer there, besides having a wife there that's willing to do that. So, but yeah, crazy.
I mean, if it wasn't, it was a draw, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's the only way I guess I could pass up a big buck, but I don't know. I know too many people that have passed up like huge
It's not a
bucks.
hard tag, not a hard tag to draw. So that's the part about it. It's like it's not,
Oh, okay.
the area is not known for big deer. Like it's one of those areas you kill, you see a 4 point, you kill it. Like that's
Wow.
the and we were gonna hunt hard. We would have tried to find something like 140 inches or bigger. That was what our goal was. But I mean, we just strolled right out of town and found this thing on a private land, like down the bottom, and it just is so weird. Like just the way it worked out is almost like that 16-year-old kid with that big bowl. But
And that's another thing that I want to talk to my viewers about just really shortly is do not be afraid or have anxious anxiety. Like it's okay to have anxiety when you're going up to a landowner, but don't think, oh, this deer's on public or this deer is on private. I don't want to even bother. There's
right.
always an opportunity to ask a landowner. I've
Oh yeah.
had so many experiences where I've learned so much just hunting on private to be able to get access to it. Anywhere you can hunt is good. And if there's a big buck there, who cares about what the hunting industry thinks, whether it's on private or public? Go
Exactly.
hunt the deer. And I think
Yep.
a lot of people are so caught up and they're like, my pride won't let me hunt on private land. It's like you're not hunting on a ranch just because it's private, it's surrounded by public.
Yep.
It's still free range
Yeah, I mean, you
hunting.
got 20 acres of private property in between public. Like, what difference does it make?
Yeah.
It's just two rolling hills, but you catch a deer on it. Oh, private property, you can't hunt it. Well, ask the landowner first to make sure. It's definitely nerve-wracking for sure, but I mean, if you can get yourself over that curve, I mean, you'll be fine.
Yeah. And I take a very tactical approach like how I get hunting permission. Usually I ask 8 months in advance. I do all this research and I'll offer to do help on their farm or whatever the case is. But sometimes when you're running and gunning, like I got that stock on my biggest deer ever because it was on public, but the only way to get to it, it was landlocked unless I hiked 6 miles around, was to ask this old lady for permission. She's like, "Oh, go right ahead, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Okay." I'm literally in my like Kyrie Irving basketball shoes, not ready to
Right.
go hunting. I throw on my scent lock camo. My buddy gets his camera out, and we hike through this lady's yard in a drainage ditch and go around stalking, and he stays back.
Heck
Coolest
yeah.
thing I've ever
That's
experienced. And this old lady, I was like, I know I just said I wanted to go this one time, but is there any way that I could like go again? And I got her name off of Onyx and looked her up on Facebook Messenger, and she's like,
awesome.
you know what, Kyle, you were so nice that you can come hunt anytime you want. I was like, let's
That's
go.
cool.
And
That's
that
awesome.
I can't say how many times that's happened to me. Like
Oh yeah.
it's happened a lot for me here and other places. But you have to also keep in mind you wouldn't want someone probably on your land, so respect it first of all, be grateful, and follow up and let them know when you're coming. Because I think a
Right.
lot of times people just show up or they'll bring multiple people. I always ask and give a fair representation and lay it out like, hey, I might have a buddy come with me and film, or I might have a friend with me hunting. But if you just show up and there's like two trucks or there's multiple people, they're going to be like, what the heck is going on? So I
Yep.
think giving the landowner a clear set of what your expectations are so they understand it is also important.
No, treat it like it's your own property, and how you would want to be treated if you had somebody you give them permission.
Yeah, my buddy and I did a cow elk hunt um with like you have to use a antique muzzle loader. It's a freaking nightmare, like black powder, 50 cal muzzle loader and we stalked these elk and basically none of the people would want to hike back there and from public, so we knew that the elk would be there, but because his family owned some of the private on the other side of the mountain, we could cut the distance by like 7 miles, basically by walking 1 mile off of his private onto public. So we were hunting public, but just sometimes I'll ask landowners, "Hey, can I cut through your property for access?" And a lot of times they'll say yes because they're like, as long as you don't hunt on my land. Or sometimes they'll say, you can hunt on my land as well. So I think just accessing areas sometimes differently. Obviously, it depends where you're at. If it's like a huge sage flat, it's probably all public land or whatever. It all depends where you're hunting in the country. But I think it's interesting, like some landowners will be more willing. It's changed with leasing and other things for whitetails, but you never know what's going to happen. You have nothing to lose, like you said, for asking.
I will say though, like 9 times out of 10, they're gonna say no.
Yeah,
Just flat out. I mean, it's cool and encouraging to hear this that we got permission, but I mean, I drew an elk tag. I'll even say the area. I drew an elk tag in area 117 2 years ago, and there's hardly any public up there. But I heard that there's elk all over it if you can find one landowner to get permission. So I went up there for 3 weeks, not solid, but like 3 weeks in a row. I went up there, so 3 or 4 times in that span, and asked just landowners, just drive landowner to landowner to landowner to landowner, and didn't get a single person to say yes. And we probably asked 30, 35 landowners for permission. We even offered $1,000 for cash. Nope,
wow.
not a single one. So that's just
Yeah,
one
I
of those
can't
things.
afford that.
Yeah, 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 it's well, we saved for that, but it didn't work. So I mean, just keep your money for something else.
Guess so.
Just
Um,
gotta catch them on the right day, I guess.
so just to close, so are you a realtor for like houses or for land?
Both. I can do whatever.
Both.
Commercial, land, residential, yep, the whole nine.
Gotcha.
I normally do residential is kind of the main thing that I do, but yeah, if there's people that have land that are wanting to sell, I'd be more than happy to do that. And I think as I get into this industry even more and more and more, land is going to be a pretty high one on my priority just because I have so many dang people that are in Wyoming and looking at land. And I think that would be a huge help, instead of just staying just in Casper for just houses. But I'm good with whatever. I mean, I work 7 days a week, so
Yeah, and
I'm good with
that's what
whatever.
I want to do for a living. I'm just trying to find like I wanted to start with like a company like Whitetail Properties or something that I could get my foot in the door, just because it does take a lot of financial like backing for
Oh,
companies like that for selling land specialists and real estate brokers. You got to have the money and savings to start it.
yeah.
But
Yeah, biggest encouragement is to have 6 months of savings
yep,
for your bills put away already. And then the number two thing is finding somebody who's willing to invest the time into teaching you. And that's really hard to do. There will be people that say, "Oh yeah, come on board, we'll teach you," and they don't do it. I learned that out pretty quick. Um, what my personal opinion, I would search out whoever the best ones are, even if they're not well known or if they're well known, whatever. Um, Whoever the best realtors are from wherever you're at, go talk to those people. Say, I want to work for you because you're killing it in this industry, and I want to know how to do that. Can I be on your team? What can I do to help? Like, I want to learn this industry. I'd rather learn from you than some scumbag that works part time. So
100%.
yeah, definitely what you should do. 100% there.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like I've been trying to get internships with these companies and until I started to reach out to individuals, I never really got the ball rolling
Right.
because you're just another resume being sent in. It's not a personal connection. So I'm always trying to network with that. So maybe that's something I can chat with you another time when you're not trying to get back onto your live or whatever to do that. So obviously this isn't coming out for a couple weeks. I have all the podcasts premiering, but I'll send you something that we can share out to social media so everybody can watch it. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much
so
for your
much for your
time, dude.
time,
I
dude. I
really
really
appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy and you got a family and stuff, so I
Yeah.
uh I appreciate you taking the time to do it. And everyone, please go check out his stuff. He makes some amazing content. yes, he kills a lot of things. So that's also cool. He's a very humble guy. He might not say it, but he's a killer and he works really hard. So if you could go check out his stuff, I'll leave everything in the description. And yeah, is there anything you'd like to say before closing?
I don't think so, man. I appreciate it, and yeah, I appreciate your time and your effort of putting this on. So yeah, goes both ways, man. Keep it up.
No problem. It's I'm not a podcast professional. Like I said, this is only number 8, so I'm
That's all
still
right, dude.
I'm starting out, but hopefully we can grow it. It's I got surgery and this is one of the things that I can do since I can't be shed hunting a ton. So I
Right,
figured
no
it'd be
worries.
a good way to do some content. So
Yeah,
appreciate it. Alrighty.
absolutely.
Take care, man.
We'll catch you later.
See ya. Alrighty, everybody. So that's another episode closing on Bows, Bros, and Bucks. Thanks so much for watching.